Hi, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all. My name is Ashell Forde. I am a cybersecurity professional, a techie, a founding member of the Internet Society Barbados chapter, and a superhero nerd. So if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, just do it. Okay? All right. It's my pleasure today to lead our icebreaking session. So I want to ask Mr. Joshua Johnson and Mr. Shamar Ward to join me on stage. And while they do that, I'll explain to you how this is going to work. So we are all going to interview Mr. Shamar Ward today. And how we are going to all do that is we are going to use a very simple tool. We all have Wi-Fi access, and I know everybody has their smartphone. So I'm going to ask you to simply go to this URL, slido.com, and enter IGFBB 2019. And we are all going to do the first poll together so we all understand how it works, right? Okay? So you guys' screens on your phones, it's going to look a little different to this. But you guys are going to have the opportunity to actually choose your response. So this is a question we have for you guys. And the point of this icebreaker session is not just that we all get in. We have a question, great. I was expecting that. Oh. Okay. We give it a few minutes so everybody gets the code. Great. The idea is that you guys not only get to vote on the polls that will be put up, and they will be interspersed throughout the next 20 minutes, but you also get to ask your own questions. And as you ask questions, they'll appear on the screen, and everybody that is involved can also vote for the questions. So if I ask a question, you think it's a really good question, and you want Shamar to answer that question, you just upvote it, and the questions with the most votes float to the top. So we get to see the questions that everybody wants to see. And Shamar has, Joshua, who's going to be actually asking Shamar the questions. He can see the questions, and he can ask Shamar his questions or questions from the audience as well. Are we ready to go to the first poll? All right, so I'm asking you guys how much you know about internet governance right now, right? Just be honest. All right. No experts. Should have brought my phone with me so I could vote. All right, so I think we all have the hang of it. You guys should see tabs on your screens. Everybody sees the question tab. You have the option of asking questions. You can put in your name. You can let us know who it is that's asking a question, or you can ask anonymously. Okay? So I've done my job, so I'm going to let Joshua get on with it. Thank you, guys.
Good morning, everybody. According to this poll, most of you seem to not know anything about internet governance, and I, as your voice, will start with the first question from Mr. Shamar. What is internet governance, sir?
Okay, well, in very simple terms and very simple words, internet governance is the mechanism or the ability to how the internet is managed. Also, it speaks about the engagement level as well of persons having the say, or for example, being involved in the process of how the internet is run, how it operates. There are many issues that come up in terms of you may not be familiar with them, or you may not be aware of them, but there are many issues that present themselves in the form of how should we manage the internet. And the part of internet governance which is most key is that no one person should have full control over the internet. It should always be open for persons who use it. It should be free to all. So that's the real concept of internet governance, the management of it, how it is ran, and that no one should ever necessarily be in control of the internet.
Okay, so why did all these rules come about for the internet, do you think?
Okay, well, that's kind of a broad question, but there should be some management of the internet, but that becomes ticklish, of course, because normally when you hear the term management, there's someone in control. So the approach that is taken currently is about multi-stakeholder engagement, which persons are involved in terms of having a say. So basically, there are many groups. ICANN is one of them. ISOC is also one of them, which is Internet Society. And there are many groups which are tasked with each of them having their own role in ensuring that the internet operates correctly. So of course, with anything in life, there must be some management or there must be some coordination of it. So that is why the reason why rules have come about. I'm speaking about rules in terms of the management of it. It goes down to the protocol level. Like for example, your browsers, the web browsers that you use actually conform to protocols, which is set by an organization called the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. And so straight through from the beginning, when you open your browser, there are a set of protocols which browser operators, Google, Firefox, and so on must follow. But that's just a simple example of why there must be some type of management of the internet. But the approach to management of it is that no one body must control it. It is open to the public, and the public that uses it should have a say in how it is managed and ran.
We have a question. Thank you very much. We have a question from the audience asking, what are some of the difficulties you face when managing the internet?
Okay. Well, one of the difficulties faced, which is a kind of an issue that's going on right now, in terms of ensuring that the internet is free to all. In Barbados, I would say the internet is relatively open to all. Right? There's no real restriction on what you can do or what you use the internet to do. Unfortunately, that is not so for everyone. For example, I'll break it down into two areas. Areas of one, access. Not everyone has access to internet. So that is actually one of ISOC's, Internet Society's mission, to build the infrastructure and to implement the infrastructure and to build new systems which would help places such as Africa and so on who may not have the access. So that's speaking on the access part of it. Now I'll speak about the control part of it. Some governments impose control mechanisms on their citizens. So for example, some countries are not actually allowed to use WhatsApp. Some countries years ago, I sure remember the BB era. Some countries actually banned the use of Blackberries because for the main reason, they want to be able to control what their people have access to. They want to be able to control and see what their people are saying. So that is really the main issues that are faced in terms of the internet today. Access and bullying, basically.
All right, we have two questions here. One, I'm going to ask, why is internet governance important? And then after that, we have a personal question asking why you're a tech nerd. Why are you a tech nerd?
Okay, so I'll answer the first question. Why is it important? Now, I know many of you may say, yeah, school, no, what this has to do with me. Do understand, right, that any decision that is made at a policy level, that is made at a protocol level, that's made at any of these meetings that is held by these governing bodies affects you. And it doesn't only affect you today, but it will affect you in the future. You may have an innovation sometime in the future. You may say, for example, you want to develop a robot that can dance. For example, say you want to develop, let me break to Bayesian terms. You want to develop a robot that can walk up, for example. But for some reason, a governing body placed a protocol in place that stops a robot from walking up. That's just an example of what I mean. In our context, in the Caribbean context, you will respect that our context is very different than, for example, North America's context, the USA and Canada. Sometimes the protocols are in place, sometimes the policies that are put in place do not take into consideration what happens here in the Caribbean and what we face here in the Caribbean. Our challenges, our context is very different. So that is why it's very important for you to have a say in the matter, because then your concerns, your issues are taken into consideration when policies and decisions are made at that level.
Following up from that, does Barbados have a specific place where they would, first of all, manage the rules for here personally, and secondly, do we have access to either read or contribute to what we think should be there?
Okay, so I answer the last question first, and then I'll switch to the other one. Yes, as I said, all of these bodies, ISOC, ICANN, ARIN, are all global entities. However, you do have the option of contributing. For example, what they do is that they open a list for comments. Any policy, protocol, or anything that's being developed, they open a list for contribution. Anyone can contribute. It doesn't matter who you are, your age, it does not matter. You can contribute. Also, there are many fellowships which are offered for young persons to go and experience how the protocols are set and also contribute. I would have benefited from both of those. I would have gone to ICANN as a Next Gen Fellow, where I would have been able to contribute and share my views on various policies and protocols which would affect us. I have also a fellow to the Internet Engineering Task Force as well, where I have had the ability to also implement and suggest policy changes and protocol changes. And going forward from there, you don't necessarily have to be in the meeting to contribute. Most of these organizations make it very simple and easy for you to contribute towards their work. Now, in terms of the management here in Barbados, which is the first question, the management here is, we still fall under the global reins. Of course, the government to some extent in terms of like domain registration and so on, and the .bb, that would of course be handled and managed by Barbados's government. However, in terms of the policies, protocols, of recent, there have been some moves to implement a few policies and protocols, but not protocols, mainly policies which may affect internet use. But so far, not as yet. Our government doesn't necessarily manage it per se. We mainly look to the international bodies for guidance on those matters. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. We have one more poll up now. I'm asking, are you getting the gist of it? So you are free to vote. Answer. All right, so that's good. We think you're beginning to understand. Good. Do you have any more questions? Yeah. What's your job?
Okay. Well, currently I'm an analyst programmer at the Caribbean Examinations Council. I'm also a part-time demonstrator at the University of West Indies KFL campus.
We have a comical question here, in my opinion. Do you think that not having WhatsApp in some countries makes sense?
Okay, interesting question. No, it makes sense to them because it's implemented, and I explain why I say that. From the government's perspective, based on how the government operates, their view or their vision is that, we want to ensure that we know what our people are doing. We want to ensure that we know what our people are saying about us, and there's nothing that can be compromised. And in some instances, I've also heard that the banning of WhatsApp is linked to preventing terrorism. as well. I've also heard that mentioned. It was more in reference to WhatsApp calling though. But depending on the country's reason for the way they operate, because in this part of the world we are not familiar with their structure, right? So they have a particular reason for it. From my perspective, I think it is very unsettling, but from their perspective, they have a different view and vision of why they want to do that. So that would be my answer to that.
Another question from the audience. Do you believe that most loopholes are being abused by corporate companies with mining of user data mining or sales of your personal information? Do you believe that most loopholes are being used by corporate companies with mining of user data or sales of your personal information?
All right, so I'll draw back and say this is my personal opinion, right? I don't think anyone does anything for free, okay? And all of us in here use applications for free, including the same WhatsApp. Right? I can't say per se what what they do in the background, but all I can say is that, to be very honest with you, I believe there's some monetary vision or something for whatever application is being developed. Everyone tries to monetize their application. So I would say there is always some aim to monetize it. There are some social good applications, let me do say, that have no vision for a monetary approach. But at some points, those social good applications which were developed for social good, they sometimes depend on the management of them, and then when they recognize, they can't really, make it without making some type of income, they tend to switch gears. So originally, it may be designed to be a social good application, but then after that, it turns into something that is monetized, and then the selling and so on goes on of information.
Okay, thank you. As a young person, how do you think you use the internet differently to older people, and what apps do you use most?
Okay.
As a young person, how do you think you use the internet differently to an older person?
Okay.
And what apps do you use most?
Okay. Well, mostly I use WhatsApp. That's the main app. Now I'll go across to technology-based type applications. I would mostly say a bit of Instagram, Facebook, but I use it for different purposes. I would say use it for different purposes than most. I use Instagram and Facebook for information and dissemination, send no information, advertising and so on. A lot of persons forget, Facebook and Instagram and so on. Well, they're very good for sharing information with friends and family and nice photos and so on. They can be actually very beneficial to those persons who may be in a small business. It can be very beneficial to those persons who are in NGOs. It has huge benefit. So while I use those same applications, I may use them differently from time to time. I also use them for testing as well. Where I test various applications in terms of there are some applications that allow you to publish straight to, for example, using a Facebook API and so on. So there are many uses, and I probably use them a little different. When we speak about the aged population, that's where I would say my use is a bit different. What I will also say, though, is that from my experiences, technology is becoming simpler to use. And because of that, I'm seeing a great change. As I use my grandmother, for example, at first, I gave her an Amazon Kindle, and it was very difficult for her to use at first. But after a while, I sat with her, I showed her different things and so on. Sometimes it will take a little longer than you. But as long as you show them the main concept and you get them familiar with using it and so on, it will come. So as technology gets simpler, as more research goes into interface design, simplicity of use, and so on, I believe that will change.
Before I get to this poll that's here now, I want to ask you one more question, which is, Why is it, with examples, that we need the internet governance in Barbados? Like, are there negative uses that we should know about of internet, and that will help us to understand why these rules are necessary?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, everything that has its benefits, there are negative aspects of it. And I use one very key thing, for example, of cyberbullying. Of course, there should be legislation, there should be programs, and I know there are a few programs, but there needs to be more of an understanding as to these various types of things that can affect people. I mean, to some of us, for example, I use cyberbullying as an example. For some of us, that may just seem as a brush off or a skim over, but this is something that can seriously impact a person's life, and not just a life today, but a life moving forward, because as we know, things posted to the internet, they can't stay there forever. So I think that, for example, using one of those as an example is where it's very important for us to understand at this level that we should have a say in these matters. We should also have a say in these matters for persons who don't have a say. All of that is very, very important.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you guys. I wanted to ask you to help me thank Shamar and Joshua for leading the session. I also want to thank you guys for being enthusiastic participants. And the two people who still don't have a clue what this has to do with them, I would like you to see me outside, please, okay, at the break. Right? I hope you guys have a wonderful remainder of IGF. It was awesome being here. I really enjoyed this, and have a good day.